When you think 2002 thrillers, you probably remember the hits, the ones that kept you on the edge of your seat. But for every smash success, there were movies that completely missed the mark. We're talking A-list stars, massive budgets, studio scandals, last-minute reshoots, and box office numbers so bad they barely covered the popcorn. From legendary directors to action icons at the peak of their fame, these are 10 thrillers that bombed at the box office in 2002. Leave a comment below with which one of these you remember. Number 10, City by the Sea.
Long Beach. City by the Sea.
You know this guy?
No, it's been a long time since I've been in Long Beach, and I wouldn't have forgotten him.
You'd think a gritty crime drama starring Robert De Niro would be a safe bet in 2002. Well, not this time. City by the Sea was based on the true story of Long Beach, New York detective Vincent LaMarca, a man haunted by his past. His father had been executed for a notorious 1950s kidnapping, and despite that shadow, LaMarca grew up to become a cop.
After they executed my old man, I was a kid with nothing. The only thing that saved me was that cop. He taught me everything. He was the kindest guy I ever met.
But history has a cruel sense of humor, because his own son ends up becoming a murder suspect.
Long Beach got a positive ID on the Chevy Nova. It's registered to Joey LaMarca.
My Joey?
Yeah.
That's a solid hook, right? Generational trauma, crime, family drama. It sounds like prestige material. The film boasted a great cast: De Niro, Frances McDormand, James Franco, Eliza Dushku, and William Forsythe. In fact, De Niro personally requested Franco for the role, after seeing him play the title role in the 2001 TV movie James Dean. Behind the scenes, though, that's where things get messy. The movie was financed by Franchise Pictures and Epsilon, and Franchise initially claimed the budget was a hefty $59 million, which sounds expensive for a moody crime drama. Well, that's because it wasn't true. After an investigation uncovered financial fraud, the real budget was revealed to be around $39 million. The fallout from that scandal led to lawsuits from Entertainment, and by 2004, Franchise Pictures was completely wiped out. So how did the movie perform? Well, it was released September 6, 2002 and distributed by Warner Brothers. The film opened to a lukewarm $8.9 million, landing in third place behind the teen thriller Swim Fan. Not exactly the crime drama domination Warner Brothers was hoping for.
I don't think so.
By the end of its short run, City by the Sea scraped together just $22.4 million domestically. Warner Brothers' share was about $12.3 million, which didn't even cover the cost of prints and advertising. Critics didn't help matters either. Reviews called it mediocre, overly melodramatic, and buried under cliches instead of a gripping father-son tragedy. Audiences got a slow-burn drama that just sank. For a film with this much talent, both in front and behind the camera, City by the Sea proves that even prestige thrillers can drown at the box office. Number 9, Bloodwork.
What? She gave blood?
Yes, McCaleb. Yes, yes. She's the same blood type as you are.
If you told someone in 2002 that a serial killer thriller, directed by and starring Clint Eastwood, would struggle at the box office, they probably wouldn't believe you. But that's exactly what happened with Bloodwork. Based on the 1997 novel by Michael Connelly, the film follows a retired FBI profiler who survives a heart transplant, only to discover that the donor was one of his serial killer's victims. When his own blood analysis reveals new clues, he's pulled back into the hunt. It's a great premise, personal stakes, serial killer, aging lawman, classic Eastwood territory.
Same reason that he had died on the jurisdiction line here. Somebody's trying to jerk us all off.
The supporting cast included Jeff Daniels,
Case of beer an hour.
Wanda DeJesus, Paul Rodriguez,
What a waste of a good Mexican's heart!
and Angelica Houston. So on paper, this looked solid. Filming began in late February 2002, and the movie hit theaters by August 9th. That's a fast turnaround for a $50 million studio thriller financed by Warner Brothers. Unfortunately, it ran straight into a buzzsaw. Opening weekend competition included the Vin Diesel action hit Triple X, and the family sequel Spy Kids 2, The Island of Lost Dreams. Bloodwork pulled in just $7.4 million, landing at number 5. By the end of its domestic run, it had earned a soft $26.2 million. Overseas, another $5.5 million, with a worldwide total of $31.7 million. After theaters took their cut, Warner Brothers saw about $17.4 million. Not even enough to cover prints and advertising, let alone the $50 million production budget.
You sick son of a bitch.
The studio eventually bundled Bloodwork with 3 other films in a $20 million broadcasting package deal for TBS and TNT, basically trying to squeeze whatever value they could out of it. Critically, the film split audiences. Roger Ebert gave it a strong 3.5 out of 4 stars, praising its craftsmanship. But others found it predictable and underwhelming, arguing that the normal, reliable Eastwood magic just wasn't there this time.
Next time you come around this dock, this Mexican's gonna kick your ass.
In the end, Bloodwork wasn't a disaster on the level of some of the other films on the list. But for a $50 million thriller with Clint Eastwood at the helm, this was a major disappointment. Number 8, Collateral Damage.
You want collateral damage, huh? Who the fuck are you? I give you fucking collateral damage.
In the early 2000s, Arnold Schwarzenegger was one of the biggest action stars on the planet. So when he signed on for a revenge thriller, it seemed like a guaranteed hit. That thriller was called Collateral Damage. Arnold plays Gordy Brewer, a Los Angeles firefighter whose wife and son are killed in a terrorist bombing. When the system fails him, he takes matters into his own hands, traveling to Colombia to hunt down the guerrilla commander responsible. Classic early 2000s action setup, explosions, jungle warfare, and one angry dad. The film was co-financed by Warner Brothers and Bel Air Entertainment for a hefty $85 million. But here's where things get complicated. Collateral Damage was originally set for release on October 5, 2001. Then September 11th happened. With a storyline centered around terrorism and civilian casualties, Warner Brothers quickly pulled the film from release, reportedly losing around $3 million in advertising costs. It was eventually rescheduled for February 8, 2002, opening against Rollerball and Big Fat Liar. And at first, it looked promising. The film won the weekend with over $15 million. But then the drop hit. Poor reviews and weak word of mouth sent the second weekend crashing down to $8.4 million, nearly a 50% plunge. No! Audiences just weren't connecting with it. By the end of its domestic run, Collateral Damage had earned about $40 million. Overseas brought in another $38.3 million, for a worldwide total of $78.3 million. After theaters took their cut, Warner Brothers ended up with around $43 million, which was barely enough to cover prints and advertising, and nowhere near enough to justify that $85 million budget. And here's an interesting what could have been. A young Sofia Vergara was originally supposed to appear as an airplane hijacker, but that entire subplot, including a hijacking scene, was ultimately cut from the film. In the end, Collateral Damage wasn't a total wipeout, but for an $85 million Arnold action vehicle, released during his prime, this was a major financial misfire. Number 7, Dragonfly.
What?
She said, Dragonfly.
Nothing says early 2000s thriller like a grieving widower, mysterious messages, and maybe some ghosts. That's the setup for Dragonfly. The film stars Kevin Costner as Dr. Joe Darrow, a grieving doctor who loses his wife in a tragic accident. Though he's an atheist and a man of science, he slowly begins to believe she's trying to communicate with him through the near-death experiences of her young patients. Joe! It's part medical drama, part supernatural mystery, and that juggling act may have been part of the problem. Now here's where things get awkward. Just a year before filming began, Costner had a very public feud with Universal Pictures over the editing of For the Love of the Game. When the studio trimmed that baseball drama down to a PG-13 rating, Costner openly criticized them and reportedly refused to do much publicity. So, pairing him back with Universal for Dragonfly, that was already strange. Interestingly, the script was originally written with Harrison Ford in mind, but he passed. Behind the scenes, the financing was just as messy. Spyglass Entertainment initially planned to co-finance the film with MGM for around $75 million. MGM took one look at the budget and backed out. The project went into turnaround before Spyglass eventually struck a deal with Universal. And then came perhaps the strangest choice of all, hiring Tom Shadyac to direct. At the time, he was best known for broad comedies like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, The Nutty Professor, and Liar Liar, which was a bizarre choice. Released February 22, 2002, Dragonfly opened against Queen of the Damned and debuted at number 3 with $10.2 million. Not terrible, but not strong either. Then the reviews hit. Critics slammed it, and audiences felt misled by marketing that sold it as a spooky ghost story when it was really a slow-burn emotional drama. Word of mouth cooled quickly. By the end of its run, Dragonfly finished with $56.5 million worldwide, far below what was needed to justify its budget. In the end, Dragonfly wasn't scary enough for horror fans, wasn't grounded enough for drama fans, and couldn't escape the turbulence behind the scenes. Number 6, Femme Fatale.
I'm a bad girl, Nicholas. Real bad.
When you hear the name Brian De Palma, you expect style, seduction, twists, split screens. And in 2002, he delivered exactly that with Femme Fatale. The film follows master thief Laura Ashe, played by Rebecca Romaine, who pulls off a jewel heist at the Cannes Film Festival. But after a series of double crosses, she steals another woman's identity in an attempt to start over. However, the past doesn't stay buried for long. Co-starring Antonio Banderas, the film leaned hard into glossy neo-noir territory, full of erotic tension, dream logic, and elaborate visual sequences. The movie was independently financed by Quinta Communications for $35 million. Warner Brothers picked up U.S. distribution and released it on November 6, 2002. Unfortunately, that release date was brutal. It opened against 8 Mile, which absolutely dominated the box office. Femme Fatale debuted in just 1,066 theaters, with plans to expand, but those plans quickly evaporated. Mixed reviews and lukewarm audience response led to a soft $2.7 million opening weekend, landing in 9th place. By the end of its domestic run, it had earned just $6.6 million. After theaters took their cut, Warner Brothers saw roughly $3.6 million back. Not exactly a triumphant return for a $35 million production. Overseas numbers were slightly better at $10.2 million, but even combined, the worldwide total wasn't enough to make this anything but a financial disappointment. And yet, in the years since, Femme Fatale has developed a strong cult following, especially among critics and film enthusiasts who appreciate De Palma's bold, operatic style. Some now consider it an underrated late-career gem. So while it bombed in 2002, Femme Fatale is one of those rare cases where time has been kinder than opening weekend. Turns out, sometimes a box office failure just needs a second identity. Number 5, Abandon.
Wherever you go, I can follow.
In 2002, studios were still chasing that late 90s psychological thriller magic. Mysterious boyfriends, unreliable memories, and big twist endings. Enter Abandon. The film follows a high-achieving senior at an elite college, played by Katie Holmes, who is already cracking under the pressure of finishing her thesis and landing a prestigious corporate job. Then suddenly, her boyfriend, who vanished without explanation 2 years earlier, reappears. Is he real? Is she imagining things? Is something darker going on? Well, that's the hook. The supporting cast included Benjamin Bratt, Charlie Hunnam, and Zooey Deschanel.
Hey, detective, find any clues?
Which, looking back, is a surprisingly stacked early 2000s lineup. The film was co-financed by Paramount Pictures and Spyglass Entertainment for about $25 million and hit theaters on October 18th. Unfortunately, that release date was rough. It opened against horror sensation The Ring and the crime comedy Formula 51. Audiences overwhelmingly chose the creepy videotape over Campus Paranoia. Abandoned debuted with just $5 million, landing in 7th place. Word of mouth didn't help. Critics were blunt, with many calling the plot disjointed and muddled, arguing that it never quite delivered on its thriller promise. By the end of its domestic run, the film had earned just $10.7 million. After theaters took their cut, Paramount likely saw around $5.8 million returned, nowhere near enough to justify its $25 million price tag. And unlike some of the other films on the list, Abandoned didn't develop a cult following or critical reappraisal. It simply disappeared, which ironically might be the most fitting ending possible for a movie about someone who vanishes without explanation. Number 4, K-19, The Widowmaker.
You know what the men are calling this boat? The Widowmaker.
If you're going to spend $100 million on a Cold War submarine thriller, you better surface with a hit. Instead, K-19 The Widowmaker nearly sank at the box office. The film stars Harrison Ford as Captain Alexei Vostrikov, commander of the Soviet Union's first nuclear ballistic submarine. On its maiden voyage in 1961, disaster strikes when a malfunction in the nuclear reactor threatens to trigger a meltdown in the North Atlantic, potentially setting off World War III.
The core would melt through the reactor and start a thermonuclear explosion.
Also starring Liam Neeson as Captain Misha.
You needlessly endangered this boat and its crew.
The film was a tense race against time, with radiation levels rising and the crew forced to make impossible sacrifices to prevent catastrophe. On paper, prestige war thriller. Big stars, true story, massive scale. The problem? The price tag. Financed by the German-based company Intermedia for around $100 million. The production was already walking a tightrope. And that's before factoring in Harrison Ford's deal, $25 million up front, plus 20% of the film's gross.
Without me, you're nothing.
That alone put serious pressure on the bottom line before a single ticket was sold. Domestic distribution was handled by Paramount Pictures, which released the film on July 19, 2002, against family sequel Stuart Little 2 and creature feature Eight-Legged Freaks. Not exactly direct competition, but not helpful either. K-19 opened in 4th place with $12.7 million. Respectable, but nowhere near what a $100 million prestige thriller needs. By the end of its domestic run, it had earned just $35 million, nearly half of what Intermedia reportedly considered its low-end expectations. Overseas added another $30 million, bringing the worldwide total to roughly $65 million. For a film carrying that kind of budget and star power, it was a clear commercial failure. Critically, reactions were mixed. Some praised its tension and performances, even while acknowledging historical liberties. Roger Ebert gave it a solid 3 out of 4 stars, but strong reviews from few critics couldn't offset the financial damage. In the end, K-19 The Widowmaker delivered nuclear tension on screen, but financially, it was the real meltdown. Number 3, Impostor.
Every effort is being made to locate his murderer, this impostor.
Don't you think I know my own husband?
Nothing says early 2000s sci-fi like paranoia, aliens, and government conspiracies. That's the premise of Impostor. The story follows a top-secret government weapons designer who is suddenly arrested by a shadowy government agency. The accusation? He's not human at all, but a clone created by a hostile alien race, planning to invade Earth.
I am Spencer Oldham, you crazy!
So now he's on the run, trying to prove he's real, while everyone around him thinks he might literally explode. The film starred Gary Sinise, along with Tony Shalhoub, Madeline Stowe, Mekhi Phifer, and Vincent D'Onofrio, which is actually a pretty solid cast for a sci-fi thriller.
I'll say it one more time. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
The movie was based on a 1953 short story by legendary author Philip K. Dick. Originally, it was supposed to be just one segment of a 3-part sci-fi anthology back in 1998. But when the anthology idea was scrapped, Impostor was expanded into a full-length feature. And that's where things started to fall apart. The script was rewritten, retooled, and tinkered with for nearly 3 years. What began as a tight, paranoid short story became a stretched-out feature film, and you can kind of feel that strain on screen. Financed by Dimension Films for an estimated $40 million. Surprisingly high given the film's relatively cheap TV movie look. Impostor finally hit theaters on January 4th, 2002 after multiple delays. Audiences were not impressed. The film opened to just $3 million and placed 13th for the weekend. By its second week, it had already been yanked from most theaters. Its domestic run ended at a dismal $6.2 million. Overseas added only $1.8 million, bringing the worldwide total to a painfully low $8 million. For a $40 million sci-fi thriller, that's catastrophic. Critics were brutal, calling it a stubbornly unexciting ride into the near future. Instead of gripping paranoia and existential dread, audiences got something that felt padded and oddly lifeless. In the end, Impostor was a movie about someone accused of not being who they claimed to be. And at the box office, it never convinced audiences it was worth believing in. Number 2, Ballistic, Ecks vs. Sever.
Where do you get all these ordnance?
Some women buy shoes.
Sometimes a movie bombs, and sometimes it becomes legendary for how badly it bombs. That brings us to Ballistic, Ecks vs. Sever. The plot? Well, buckle up. Jonathan Ecks, played by Antonio Banderas, is an FBI agent forced to team up with his mortal enemy, rogue DIA agent Sever, played by Lucy Liu. Together, they must stop a villain who has developed a microscopic device that can be injected into someone's body, allowing them to be killed remotely at any time. Yeah, that's the actual premise.
In Gant's world, emotions are a liability. A machine would solve that problem. One touch of a button and he could give a head of state a heart attack.
The project has a long, strange history. The original spec script dates all the way back to 1986, under the title Legion. It sat on a shelf for years before finally being revived in the late 90s, and by the time it reached theaters, it barely resembled anything coherent. The film was financed by the infamous Franchise Pictures, alongside Epsilon for a reported $70 million. But as investigations later revealed, Franchise had been inflating budgets to siphon money off the top. The real production cost is now believed to have been closer to $35 million. Still expensive, but not $70 million expensive. Distributed domestically by Warner Brothers, the film was released on September 20th, 2002, opening against The Banger Sisters, The Four Feathers, and Trapped. It placed 4th for the weekend with just $7 million. From there, it collapsed. Ballistic finished its domestic run with $14.3 million. Overseas added another $5.6 million, bringing the worldwide total to just under $20 million. And then there were the reviews. They weren't just bad, they were historic. Roger Ebert gave it a half a star. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a 0% approval rating from 117 critics. One of the rare big-budget studio films to achieve that infamous distinction. Over time, it's frequently been cited as one of the worst movies ever made. Criticized for incoherent editing, nonsensical plotting, wooden dialogue, and action scenes that somehow managed to be both loud and boring. In the end, Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever wasn't just a box office bomb. It was a critical detonation. Number 1, I See You, aka Detox.
You see what I mean, Doc? You ain't the Wizard of Oz here. You can't just hand out courage.
Taking the number 1 spot is a thriller so troubled it barely even made it to theaters. Originally titled Detox, I See You follows a disgraced FBI agent with a drinking problem who checks into a remote detox facility in the snowy wilderness of Wyoming. He's joined by 9 other troubled law enforcement officers, all trying to get clean. But when a massive snowstorm cuts the clinic off from the outside world, someone inside starts killing. Isolation, addiction, serial killer, blizzard. It sounds like a contained high-concept thriller. The film starred Sylvester Stallone, alongside Tom Berenger, Charles S. Dutton, Dina Meyer, and Robert Patrick. And it wasn't cheap. The movie was co-financed by Universal Pictures and Capella for an estimated $60 million, with Stallone reportedly earning $20 million of that himself. Here's the twist. The movie was actually completed in 1999. But after disastrous test screenings, the studio panicked. Reshoots were ordered, story changes were made, and the title was changed from Detox to ICU. Things got so messy that producers Ron Howard and Brian Grazer had their company, Imagine Entertainment, remove its name from the film entirely. And that's never a good sign. Eventually, the movie was picked up by DEJ, the distribution arm of video rental giant Blockbuster LLC. And instead of a wide theatrical release, it received a very soft opening in just 78 theaters. Opening weekend gross, 79,000. Not million, thousand. Overseas, where it still carried the original title Detox, the film managed another 6.3 million, bringing its worldwide total to around 6.4 million for a movie that reportedly cost 60 million. Critics were merciless. One BBC critic famously quipped that Hollywood's confidence in the film was lower than Pee Wee Herman's Oscar chances, calling it a boring, formulaic serial killer slog that wouldn't do anything to revive Stallone's fading action hero status. And just like that, a film that was meant to be a tense psychological thriller became one of the most quietly catastrophic bombs of 2002. Delayed, reshot, retitled, dumped into theaters. ICU didn't just bomb, it was buried in a snowstorm and left there. As always, thanks for watching. And if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more videos just like this.